Welcome to the first in a series of training videos on how to fly the A320. I'm not going to take you through absolutely every aspect of the A320 because there's an awful lot to learn, but I'm going to take you through all the important steps. If you've never been in the Airbus before, hopefully this video will help you. Now, the documentation you get with Aerosoft is brilliant, but, and there had to be a but, didn't there? I work visually, and it took me a long time working through the manuals to actually understand what I was doing. So I thought I'd make a set of videos and I'll take you through every key switch and how to fly the Airbus. And we're going to do a flight from Gatwick up to Manchester, so that's EGKK to EGCC. And like I said, I'm going to go through absolutely everything. So the first thing you want to do, if you're going to fly along with this, is load up your aircraft at Gatwick. I'm at gate 107 and the time and date is the 5th of September 2016 and the time is 12 o'clock midday. And if you've never been in the Airbus before, or you've just got it running on default, when you fire it up you'll have some power and you won't be in a cold and dark state. So everyone sings from the same hymn book and we're all at the same stage. The first thing I'm going to do is set up cold and dark, and to do that you need to go down to the right CDU and you press the aircraft state and go cold and dark. Excellent. So now everything is dead and we can all start from the same point. So as I said, we're going to do a flight today from Gatwick up to Manchester. So the first thing we really ought to do is sort the fuel out, and Aerosoft provide a tool for doing this. So this is on a Windows 7 machine, but if you go to, this is a Windows 10 machine, and hit the Windows button and find the Aerosoft folder. Inside the Aerosoft folder you will find the fuel planner. So we run the fuel planner up and we just need to enter the two airports. So we're going EGKK to EGCC and generate a load sheet. This load sheet will be based on the number of passengers and the amount of cargo, which has been randomly set at 85 and 9500. Generate the load sheet, and that's all there is to do. Make a mental note of this block fuel. We're going to need this later on when we program up the CDU. So 6.6 is our block fuel. Exit. So that comes as standard with the Airbus. Now we need a flight plan, and to make my life easier I use Velasoft's EFB, the electronic flight bag from them. There is a supplementary video on how to set that up, how to install it and configure it for use with FSX or P3D, but once you've got it installed, I'll just drag it across onto this screen. There we go. And I need to create the flight plan. So we go to route setup and we're going to select a route using Route Finder. And again we're going EGKK to EGCC and I find a route. There's the route we're going to be flying today, and I click OK and the route is entered into here. I need a cruise altitude. Manchester is a short flight, so I'm going to use a cruise altitude of flight level 220 and I press the save button. When I press the save button I get an option to save this as various different types of route plans, company routes for different aircraft. The one we're interested in is the Aerosoft Airbus A320. The location for the A320 flight plans are usually in your documents folder. In there you'll find Aerosoft, and in there Airbus, and then the flight plans. This is the 5th time I've generated this flight plan. The flight plan, the company route that is EGKK to EGCC0505 because it's the 5th time. Click OK, and that company route will now be available to me when I fire up my CDU later on, and press the activate button. The activate button takes me to EGKK. There is the airport plan, and if I actually press the little picture, the icon of an aeroplane, you can see I'm there at gate 107. I'm going to move this off to a second monitor. If you have the luxury of having multiple monitors, this flight plan will keep up to date with your position, and in each stage of the departure and en route and arrival, it will take you through absolutely everything. It is also possible within inside AvidaSoft, and I may do another video on this, to go to departures, right click and find out which SID you're going to use. Now we're going to be using a SID to the north. We're departing to the north, so I select SID. This is telling me that we're going to be using runway 08. Active Sky Next and Active Sky Cloud Art are providing our weather and themes, and the weather currently for this date is recommending runway 08 right. So when I select 08 right, I can select my SIDs, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use Vox ATC. Vox ATC is going to provide AI traffic for us, and air traffic control will also tell us what departure we're going to use, and I think this is a little bit more realistic. So for now, I'm just going to move this off to another screen. Okay, so we've calculated the fuel load, we've generated a load sheet, and we have a flight plan. So it's time to start firing up the aircraft. So before we start firing up the aircraft, if we look at the left hand side, we can see the jetway isn't attached yet. So let's attach the jetway. I've got no idea how the pilot got in to the aircraft. He probably climbed up a ladder or something, but let's attach the jetway anyway. Having attached the jetway, we then need to check that our parking brakes are on. So we'll look down at the center console and have a quick look at the parking brake, and if it's not on, let's apply it. So the process we follow is overhead panel and switch both batteries on. We then need to switch on the nav and logo lights, so anyone outside the aircraft knows there are actually people on board. And now we'll drop down to the right hand side CDU and attach our ground services. So press the ground services button and you can see they're all there. This was set up because we set the system to cold and dark, and that's the default setting for cold and dark. At this point I load the configuration for fuel and passengers. Load, and as we've already created the load sheet with the AeroSoft fuel planner, if I press the load sheet button, there is our config, and I'll just hit the instant button and everything has been put on board. Up to the overhead panel, and we need to switch the external power on. Next is to align the IRS and switch on the ADIRS. All three need to be switched on, and the on bat light needs to confirm as going off. Fuel pumps are next. 6 fuel pumps, and switch them all on. At this point it's also wise to switch on the electric pump. This will start building up hydraulic pressure on the brakes. down to the passenger lights now. We'll arm the emergency lights, switch on the no smoking, and switch on the seatbelt signs. Next step is optional, but I just like the way it looks. Overhead panel lights, bring those up. Moving down to the center console, we now switch on both radios. And we need to check that the flaps are at 0, that the ground spoilers are disarmed, and the throttles are also at 0. Moving to the front view, it's now time to turn up the brightness on the primary flight display and the ND. Bring those up to a level that are comfortable for you. And on the center console, we bring up the display for the ECAM and the lower display. And it's now time to open up all the doors and start the passenger loading and cargo loading. And I use GSX to give us a little bit of visual on that. So return to the main menu, aircraft doors, and we want to open the aft door. Not that it's going to be used because we have an air bridge. And the front and rear cargo doors. And we can call up GSX, and then we call up GSX, and option number 4, request boarding, and the ground handler, let's use British Airways. As that's all happening, we can now do our first checklist. Now checklists are exactly that. You do the workflow, and then the checklist confirms that everything's been done. So to switch on the checklists, write CDU, checklist, switch on, and start the cockpit preparation.
Okay, let's start with the cockpit preparation checklist.
Batteries,
Both on,
electrical power,
and external power is on.
navigation lights,
On,
engines master,
both off,
engine mode selector,
checked, normal,
landing gear lever,
checked,
parking brake,
on,
flaps,
checked, position,
speed brake lever,
checked, retracted,
thrust levers,
idle,
transponder mode,
checked, standby,
radio control panel,
on,
ECAM recall,
And I haven't pressed the ECAM recall button now, so if I do it now,
checked,
anti-skid,
on,
flight director,
on,
emergency lights,
checked and armed,
no smoking signs,
on,
anti-ice,
off,
probes and window heat,
auto,
air conditioning,
checked,
ventilation panel,
is checked,
electrics panel,
checked,
fuel pumps,
on,
hydraulics,
is checked,
accumulator brake pressure,
checked,
e.g. WPS,
on,
EFCS,
on,
ADIRS,
checked,
emergency equipment,
is checked,
checklist complete.
so we've run the first checklist, everything's fine, and the accumulated brake pressure is fine, so I can now switch off on the overhead panel the electric pumps. It's now time to start up our APU. So we press the master switch, press the start button, and then wait for it to power up. Looking down at the center console, if the lower display hasn't automatically switched to APU, and it usually does, just press the APU button, and we're looking here and waiting for it to become available. Again, if I look at the overhead panel, we'll see that the buttons are green at the moment. Sorry, the buttons are blue at the moment. When it becomes available, we'll see an available light come up as well, but I usually just watch the lower display. So there we go, the APU service is now available. Looking at the overhead panel, we can see the start button has gone green, and I can switch on the APU bleed. Now we have power being generated internally. We can disconnect the external power. Before we disconnect it, we need to switch it off. And then it's down to the right CDU, return, go to the ground services page, and it's now safe to switch all of these off. And at this point it's time to put the flight plan in. So looking at the left CDU, we go to the initialize page and type in our route, which is EGKK to EGCC, and enter it in the top right. Then you'll see the company routes that have been saved. As I said, I've done this 5 times. They're all identical routes, but for training I went through the whole process. So I'm going to select the last one, number 5, and my company route is now in the CDU. We need to give it a flight number. A cost index, and I'm not paying for the fuel. 60 gets me up to a high altitude fast enough, and my cruise altitude was 220, and I should press the enter that, and then I should press the align IRS and go to the next page by pressing the right arrow and put our block fuel in, which we got from the fuel planner, which was 6.6. I now go to the performance page, and I usually go for a flaps 2, take off, and then go to airport, departure airport, and select departure. At the moment I don't officially know where I'm departing from, so it's time to call up ATC. The add-on I use for ATC is Vox ATC with the UK enhancement. So we'll bring this up and enable it. You cannot enable the flight plan, you cannot enable Vox ATC until the flight plan has been fed into the Microsoft engine or the P3D engine. Not the plane, but the Microsoft P3D flight plan. And AvidaSoft CFB has done that all for me. So if I just click enable, it'll go through some self-diagnostics.
Test. Test.
And the first thing we need to do, of course, is get the ATIS report, and that means tune in COM1 into 13652.
"1019er. NOSIG advise you have information Bravo. This is Gatwick. Information Bravo. 1133 Zulu. In use runway 08 right. Wind 100 degrees 4 knots. Visibility greater than 20 kilometers. Temperature 182.17. QNH1019er. NOSIG advise you have information Bravo. This is Gatwick. Information Bravo. 1134 Zulu. In use runway 08 right. Wind 100 degrees 4 knots.
And having got all the information you require from ATIS, we can tune to Gatwick ground.
QNH1019er. NOSIG advise you have information Bravo. This is Gatwick. Information Bravo.
And we'll do a radio check and start talking to them in a minute, but we've already been given a couple of pieces of information which we can start feeding into the aircraft. First of all, our departure runway is 08 right, so I'll select that on the right CDU. I still don't know what SID they're going to give us, but I do now know our QNH. And our QNH is 1019. So we'll enter that in. And we can now call up and do our radio check. Gatwick ground, Skyways 561, radio check of 121.8.
Skyways 561, readability 5.
Readability 5 also, Skyways 561. Gatwick ground, Skyways 561, ready for clearance, Manchester.
Skyways 561, standby.
So we've requested clearance to Manchester. In a second they're going to give us our departure information, which we can then feed into the right
Skyways 561, cleared to Manchester Airport. Begin 1 Zulu departure. Then as filed, expect flight level 22010 minutes after departure. Departure frequency 121.905, squawk 3023.
And we need to read that back to them and confirm it. Skyways 561 is cleared to Manchester Airport. Begin 1 Zulu departure, then as filed. Departure frequency 121.905, squawk 3023.
Skyways 561, rear back correct.
And now we can start feeding that information they've given us into the systems. So on the left hand CDU, our departure was begin 1 Zulu. So we'll select that and insert. It's also wise to scroll through this and look for any flight discontinuities. And there we have, and we'll hit the clear key and clear that discontinuity out and insert it into the flight plan. And we have also been given the number for our transponder. In this case it was 3023, so we need to feed that in. Three, 0, 2, 3. And we can close the doors. Return. Aircraft doors. Closing the cargo doors. And the passenger doors. And this will then start up the next checklist.
Skyways 2901, standby. Skyways 2901, cleared
Hand
to
off.
Bermuda
Cabin sign.
International Airport,
On.
Southampton 3
Thrust
Harbour
levers.
departure. Then as
Parking
filed,
brake.
expect flight
On.
level
Barrow reference.
33010 minutes after
Checked.
departure.
1,
Departure
0,
frequency
1,
121.905,
0,
squawk
1, 9.
3030.
Check. Beacon lights.
Skyways 2901, clear to Bermuda International Airport, Southampton 300.
And we had a prompt there for the beacon lights because I forgot to switch them on. Overhead panel, whenever the doors are closed,
Set on. Checklist complete.
you
Skyways
must have the beacon lights
2901,
on.
rear back correct.
We can also now disconnect the jetway.
Request pushback and start.
Skyways 2901, pushback and start approved.
And we're ready for the next video, which will be the pushback and start.